to my channel. So today I'll be reading another Japanese folktale. The title is Ubasute in Japanese. English title is The Legend of Ubasute Mountain. So Ubasute literally means abandoning elderly woman. It is based on an old tragic custom. But it has also hopeful ending because of their wisdom. So today's picture is like this. They look so unhappy. So let's get started. The Legend of Ubasute Mountain, Part 1. A village beneath the quiet mountain. Long ago, in the mountains of old Japan, there was a quiet little village surrounded by forests, rivers, and gentle hills. The people who lived there worked hard every day. They planted rice in the spring. They cared for the fields during the warm summer. They gathered chestnuts and mushrooms in autumn. When winter came, they stayed close to their homes and waited for the snow to melt. Life was simple, but it was not always easy. Some years the harvest was rich, and every family smiled around a warm evening meal. Other years, heavy rain ruined the rice fields. Sometimes the summer was too dry. Sometimes the winter was too long. The villagers learned to be thankful for every grain of rice they could harvest. At the edge of the village stood a small wooden house with a roof made of thick straw. An old woman lived there with her only son. Her hair had turned as white as fresh snow, but her eyes were still kind and bright. Her son was a gentle young man. He worked from sunrise until sunset every day. He carried bundles of firewood down the mountain. He planted rice with careful hands. He repaired broken fences for his neighbors. Everyone knew him as an honest and hard-working man. Every evening, after finishing his work, he returned home. His mother was always waiting for him. She would smile as soon as she heard his footsteps. "Welcome home," she would say softly. "And welcome home to you, mother," the young man always answered. They cooked simple meals together. Sometimes they had rice with miso soup. Sometimes they shared mountain vegetables and mushrooms they had gathered during the day. On lucky evenings, they enjoyed a small piece of grilled river fish. No matter how simple the meal was, they always thanked each other before eating. The old woman often told stories while they sat beside the small cooking fire. She spoke about the seasons. She spoke about the stars. She remembered the village as it had been many years before. There used to be a giant cherry tree beside the river, she once said. It bloomed so beautifully that people traveled from far away just to see it. Her son listened carefully. I wish I could have seen it. The old woman smiled. It was beautiful. But every spring brings its own flowers. The young man thought about those words for a long time. His mother always seemed to know how to find hope even when life was difficult. She never complained about growing old. Instead, she smiled whenever she watched the morning sunlight shine across the fields. She loved listening to birds singing outside the window. She loved the sound of rain falling softly onto the roof. Even during cold winters, she would quietly say, "The snow makes the world peaceful." The young man admired her gentle heart. Whenever he felt tired after a long day, his mother's calm voice seemed to make everything feel lighter. One evening, while they watched the fire burn low, the old woman asked, "Did the rice fields look healthy today?" "They did," her son replied. "The young plants are growing well." She nodded happily. "That is good. If the weather stays kind, everyone in the village will have enough food. The young man smiled. "I hope so." Silence filled the room. Outside, crickets sang beneath the evening sky. The mountain breeze gently moved through the trees. The peaceful sounds blended together like a quiet song. The old woman closed her eyes for a moment. "It is a beautiful night," she whispered. Her son looked outside. The moon had risen above the dark mountains. Its soft light covered the fields with silver. "Yes," he answered. "It truly is." Days passed quietly. Morning after morning, the young man left before sunrise. His mother always packed a small lunch for him. Usually, it was a rice bowl wrapped in the leaves. Sometimes she added pickled vegetables. She always reminded him to rest whenever he became tired. "I will," he answered every day. Sometimes she walked with him to the end of the path. Then she waved until he disappeared between the trees. When evening came, she welcomed him home once again. The seasons slowly changed. The green leaves of summer became bright shades of golden and red. Cool winds carried the sweet smell of fallen leaves. Children laughed as they chased each other through the village. Women dried vegetables outside their homes. Men gathered firewood before winter arrived. The old woman enjoyed sitting outside beneath the warm afternoon sun. She watched sparrows hop across the yard. She watched butterflies dance above tiny wildflowers. Sometimes neighbors stopped to greet her. "Good afternoon. What lovely weather today." "Yes," she answered with a smile. It reminds me that every season has its own gift. Everyone respected the old woman. She never spoke harshly. Whenever someone worried about the future, she gently encouraged them. If we care for one another, she would say, our hearts will stay warm even during the coldest winter. People often left her home feeling peaceful. As autumn grew deeper, the village prepared for winter. Rice was stored carefully. Firewood was stacked beside every house. The mountain paths became quieter each day. One afternoon, dark clouds gathered above the distant peaks. Cold wind swept across the valley. The villagers looked up nervously. It may snow early this year, someone said. The old woman quietly watched the sky. It feels different, she whispered. Her son noticed the concern in her face. Is something wrong? She smiled gently. No. I was only remembering another autumn long ago. What happened then? The first snow came very early. The whole mountain became white overnight. Her son laughed softly. Then we should finish preparing before that happens again. She nodded. Yes, that would be wise. The next morning, the village bell rang. Its deep sound echoed across the valley. Everyone gathered in the village square. The headman stood beside the old wooden bell. His face looked serious. The villagers became quiet. Children held their parents' hands. No one spoke. Finally, the headman took a deep breath. I have received an order from the Lord of this land. People looked at one another. His voice became even quieter. This year's harvest has been poor. We do not have enough food for everyone. The crowd remained silent. The Lord believes difficult choices must be made. A cold wind passed through the square. No birds were singing. Even the trees seemed still. The headman slowly continued. From this winter onward, every family must take anyone who has reached 70 years of age to the mountain. Several villagers gasped. Others lowered their heads. The words felt too heavy to understand. The headman closed his eyes for a moment before speaking again. They must be left there, so the remaining families will have enough food to survive. No one moved. No one spoke. Only the wind could be heard. An old man quietly covered his face with both hands. A young mother hugged her little daughter tightly. Some people began to cry. Others stared silently at the ground. The young man felt as though the world had suddenly become frozen. His heart beat painfully inside his chest. Slowly, very slowly, he turned to toward his mother. She stood beside him without saying a word. Her face remained calm. She gently placed one hand upon his arm. "It's all right," she whispered. But the young man could not answer. His throat felt tight. He wanted to believe he had misunderstood. He wanted someone to laugh and say it was only a terrible mistake. Yet no one did. Above the silent village, the mountain stood peacefully beneath the grey autumn sky. Its forest whispered softly in the cold wind. It had watched over the village for countless generations. Now, for the first time, it seemed to hold a secret that no one wished to face. The young man looked toward its distant peak. His heart filled with fear. Winter had not yet arrived, but already it felt colder than any winter he had ever known. Part 2. The journey towards the silent peak. The days after the headman's announcement passed slowly. The whole village seemed quieter than before. People still worked in the fields. They still gathered firewood. Smoke still rose gently from the roofs each evening. Yet something had changed. The laughter of children became softer. Neighbors spoke in low voices. Many homes kept their doors closed. No one wished to speak about the order. But everyone thought about it. The young man worked harder than ever. He carried heavy bundles of wood from the mountain. He repaired the roof before the snow arrived. He filled every empty basket with chestnuts, acorns, and dried mushrooms. He hoped that somehow, if he prepared enough food, the terrible odor would no longer matter. His mother watched him quietly. One evening she said, "You have been working without rest." "I am fine," he replied. "You should sleep a little longer tomorrow." "I cannot. There is still much to do." The old woman smiled gently. "There will always be work, but your body needs kindness too." The young man looked down. He knew she was right. Yet every moment felt precious now. He wanted every day with her to last forever. As the first snowflakes began to fall, the mountain became white. The trees wore soft coats of snow. The river flowed more slowly. The mountains became silent except for the sound of clouds flying across the pale sky. Inside their small house, the fire burned warmly. The old woman carefully mended her son's winter clothes. Her hands moved slowly. The cloth was worn in many places. She stitched each tear with patient care. "You have fixed this coat many times," the young man said. She laughed quietly. "I still have many winters left. I could make you a new one." There is no need. This old coat already knows me. The young man smiled. Only his mother could say such a thing. A few days later, the first family carried out the rose order. No one saw them leave, but everyone noticed when they returned. The old couple's house stood empty. Its door remained closed. Its small garden was covered with snow. No smoke rose from the chimney. The village became even quieter. No one spoke of what had happened. The silence itself told the story. That evening, the young man sat beside the fire without eating. His mother placed a bowl of warm soup before him. You should eat. I'm not hungry. She gently touched his shoulder. You cannot carry sorrow on an empty stomach. He slowly lifted the bowl. The soup was simple. Only miso and mountain vegetables. Yet it warmed his cold hands. After a long silence, he whispered, Mother, yes, I cannot do it. The old woman looked into the fire. The order is cruel. I know. I would rather leave the village. She nodded slowly. I thought about that too. The young man looked at her with hope. Then let us go. We can live somewhere else. We can start again. The old woman smiled sadly. The mountains are wide, but winter is already here. We would not survive for long. The young man's shoulders fell. He knew she was telling the truth. Snow covered empty every path. Food was already scarce. Traveling through the mountains would be almost impossible. That night he could not sleep. The wind blew against the walls. Snow tapped softly upon the roof. The fire slowly became smaller. He listened to his mother's gentle breathing. He wished time would stop. The following morning, she prepared breakfast as always. Rice, pickled vegetables, a little hot tea. She smiled exactly as she always had. If someone had entered the house, they would never have guessed what was waiting for them. Several days later, the headman visited. He removed his straw sandals before entering. He bowed deeply. I am sorry. The young man remained silent. The headman lowered his eyes. The time has come. The rose officers will soon visit every house. If the order is not obeyed, he could not finish the sentence. Everyone already knew. The punishment would fall upon the whole family. After the headman left, silence filled the room once again. The old woman poured tea into 2 small cups. Steam rose gently into the air. She held her cup with both hands. My son, he looked at her. When you were little, You are afraid of thunderstorms. He nodded. You always stayed beside me. You said the thunder could never hurt us if we stayed together. The old woman smiled. I remember. I believed it. So did I. They both laughed softly. For a brief moment, the sadness disappeared. Then the old woman reached across the table. She gently held his hand. You have always been a kind son. You have given me many happy years. I have no regret. His eyes filled with tears. Please don't say that. She squeezed his hand gently. Listen carefully. There are times when life asks us to carry great sadness. But even then, we must never lose kindness. The young man could no longer hold back his tears. I don't want to lose you. You never will, as long as you remember me. The old woman stood. She walked to a wooden chest in the corner. Inside were only a few simple belongings. An old comb, a folded kimono, several family keepsakes. She carefully wrapped them in cloth. Then she closed the lid. I have very little, but I have had enough. The next morning arrived. The sky was clear. Fresh snow sparkled beneath the winter sun. The mountain looked peaceful, far too peaceful. The old woman dressed herself in her cleanest kimono. She tied her sash neatly. Then she brushed her white hair. When she finished, she smiled. How do I look? Her son tried to answer, but no words came. She laughed softly. I suppose I still look like an old woman. You look beautiful, he whispered. Her eyes became warm. Thank you. She prepared one final breakfast. They ate slowly. Neither of them hurried. Every sip of tea, every grain of rice, every quiet moment felt precious. When the meal was finished, she carefully washed the bowls. Then she placed them upside down to dry, just as she always had. She looked around the little house. The walls, the window, the fire, the shelves. Every corner held memories. I have been very happy here. The young man quietly tied a large woven basket to his back. It was the basket he usually used for carrying firewood. Today it would carry something far more precious. The old woman stepped toward him. Without hesitation, she climbed gently into the basket. She was much lighter than he remembered. Age had slowly taken away her strength. But it had never taken away her gentle heart. Are you comfortable? He asked. Yes. Do not worry about me. He slowly stood. The weight upon his back was not heavy. The weight inside his heart felt impossible to carry. He stepped outside. Cold air filled his lungs. Snow crunched beneath his sandals. The village was silent. A few neighbors quietly opened their doors. Some lowered their heads. Some wiped away tears. No one spoke. The young man bowed to them. Then he began walking towards the mountain path. The old woman looked back one last time. Smoke rose gently from the little houses. Children's footprints covered the snow. The old persimmon tree stood beside the road. Every familiar sight slowly disappeared behind them. The narrow path climbed higher and higher. The forest became deeper. Tall cedar trees surrounded them. Only the sound of their footsteps broke the silence. After a while, the old woman spoke softly. "My son." "Yes?" "When you become tired, please rest." He nodded. "I will." But he never stopped walking. Not even once. Far above them, the quiet mountain waited. Its snowy forest stretched towards the pale winter sky. And neither of them knew that before the day was over, a simple act of love would change not only their own lives, but the fate of the entire kingdom. Part 3. The wisdom hidden among the branches. The path grew steeper as they climbed. The young man walked slowly and carefully. Snow covered the narrow trail. Sometimes his sandals slipped on hidden stones. Sometimes the wind blew gently through the tall cedar trees, carrying tiny flakes of snow that sparkled in the sunlight. The old woman remained quiet in the basket. She listened to the sounds of the mountain, the soft whisper of the wind, the distant cry of a bird, the gentle creak of old branches moving above them. "It has been many years since I climbed this mountain," she said softly. Her son looked back for a moment. "Are you cold?" "A little." He stopped walking. He untied his warm outer coat and carefully wrapped it around her shoulders. "But then you'll be cold," she said. "I'll be all right." She smiled. "You have always thought of others before yourself." He said nothing. He simply lifted the basket once more and continued climbing. As they walked deeper into the forest, the trees became older. Their trunks were thick with moss. Their branches stretched high into the winter sky. The air smelled fresh and clean. Every breeze felt crisp. The mountain seemed peaceful, beautiful, almost sacred. It was difficult to believe such a peaceful place had become known for such sadness. After a long while, the old woman quietly reached out from the basket. She gently snapped a small twig from a nearby branch. It made only the faintest sound. The young man noticed it but did not ask why. A few moments later, she broke another twig. Then another. Each time, she dropped the broken branch onto the snowy path behind them. The small branches rested gently on the white ground. One after another, like tiny footprints. The young man finally asked, "Mother, why are you doing that?" She smiled. "The snow is becoming deeper. If you return after sunset, the path may disappear." He stopped walking. He slowly turned toward her. "You are leaving marks, so that I will not lose my way." The old woman nodded. "I have walked these mountains many times. When snow falls, every tree begins to look the same. I do not want you to become lost." The young man could no longer hide his tears. Even now, when she herself was the one being taken away, she was worrying only about him. He fell to his knees in the snow. The basket gently touches the ground. His shoulders trembled. "I cannot do this." His voice broke. I simply cannot." The old woman carefully climbed down from the basket. She placed one gentle hand upon his head, just as she had done when he was a little boy. "My dear son, you have already carried me further than enough. No, I cannot leave you here." She smiled with great kindness. "If you do not return, the officers will punish you. I do not care." "But I do." She gently brushed the snow from his sleeve. "You still have your whole life ahead of you. You must live. You must continue to help others. You must continue to be kind." He looked at her with tear-filled eyes. "What kind of kindness is this? What kind of world asks a son to leave his mother alone?" The old woman looked quietly toward the snowy trees. "It is not kindness, it is fear. When people become afraid, they sometimes forget their hearts." The forest became completely silent. Even the wind seemed to stop for a moment. The young man slowly stood. He looked around the quiet mountain. He imagined his mother spending even one night here alone. That thought was unbelievable. Unbearable. At that very moment, he made his decision. He bowed deeply before his mother. "Please forgive me." She gently nodded. "There is nothing to forgive." He lifted the basket again. But this time he turned around. Not toward the mountain peak. Toward home. The old man looked at him with surprise. "My son, I am taking you home." "You cannot." "I can." "They may punish me. They may even take my life. But I would rather lose my own life than abandon yours." The old woman closed her eyes. For a long moment she said nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost a whisper. "Thank you." Snow continued to fall softly around them. The broken branches she had left upon the path guided them safely back. Each small twig pointed the way, just as she had hoped. When evening came, they quietly reached their little house. No one saw them return. The young man carefully opened the back door. His mother stepped inside. He led her to a small storage room beneath the floor. It was a narrow space where vegetables and firewood were usually kept during winter. "I am sorry," he said. "It is small." She smiled. "It is warm. It is enough." He spread blankets across the floor. He brought fresh water. He placed a small lantern nearby. Every night, after finishing his work, he quietly carried food to her. Rice, soup, tea, sometimes dried chestnuts, sometimes sweet potatoes roasted in the ashes. During the day, she remained completely silent. Only after dark did they speak together. The young man told her everything that happened in the village. She listened carefully. Sometimes she offered advice. Sometimes she simply smiled. Winter slowly passed. No one discovered their secret. The villagers believed the young man's mother had been taken to the mountain. Many quietly pitied him. They often left small gifts outside his door. A bundle of firewood, a few vegetables, fresh rice cakes. During the new year, the young man accepted them gratefully. Months passed. Spring finally arrived. Snow melted from the mountain. Tiny green leaves appeared upon the trees once again. Birds returned. The river sang happily as it flowed through the valley. Life slowly became brighter. Then one day, a messenger from the road arrived. He rode into the village on horseback. The villagers gathered once more. The messenger unrolled an official scroll. The Lord has given a new command. Everyone listened carefully. The neighboring kingdoms are preparing for war. The Lord wishes to test the wisdom of every village. If no one can answer his challenge, the entire village will be punished with heavy tasks. Fear spread through the crowd. The messenger continued. The challenge is this. Bring to the castle a rope made from ashes. The villagers looked at one another in confusion. A rope made from ashes? It sounded impossible. Ashes fell apart at the slightest touch. How could anyone make a rope from something that crumbled into dust? The messenger rolled up the scroll. You have 3 days. Then he rode away. That evening, the village was filled with worried voices. Everyone searched for an answer. Some twisted wet ashes together. They immediately fell apart. Others mixed ashes with clay, but that was no longer a rope. No one knew what to do. The young man returned home quietly. After dark, he opened the hidden door beneath the floor. His mother smiled. You seem troubled. He told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she remained silent for a little while. Then she smiled gently. I know how to make such a rope. The young man looked at her in surprise. You do? She nodded. Make a strong rope from rice straw. Soak it well in salty water, then dry it carefully. After that, burn it very slowly without letting it collapse. When the straw becomes ash, its shape will remain. If you touch it gently, you will have a rope made entirely of ashes. The young man's eye grew wide. He had never heard such wisdom before. His mother smiled. There are many things that old hands remember. He bowed deeply. Thank you, mother. For the first time in many months, hope quietly entered the little house once again. Part 4. The mountain that taught compassion. The young man did exactly as his mother had instructed. Before sunrise, he gathered fresh rice straw. He twisted the straw into a strong and careful rope. Every strand was woven tightly. Every knot was made with patience. When the rope was finished, he soaked it in salty water. Then he hung it outside beneath the gentle spring breeze. As the rope slowly dried, he watched it carefully. He remembered every word his mother had spoken. When evening came, he prepared a small fire. Very slowly, very carefully, he placed the rope above the glowing coals. He did not let the flames become too large. He waited with great patience. The straw became darker. Little by little, it turned into black charcoal. Then, almost silently, it became soft grey ash. The young man held his breath. The rope had not fallen apart. Its shape remained exactly the same. He carefully lifted it with both hands. It was so light that it almost seemed to float. Yet it was still a rope made entirely from ashes. He smiled for the first time in many months. The next morning, he carried the fragile rope into the village headman. The headman looked at it with wide eyes. How? The young man bowed. It was made with great care. The headman gently accepted it. He did not ask another question. Soon afterward, the messenger returned from the castle. The rope was presented before the lord. The lord examined it closely. He turned it over in his hands. He looked at every small detail. At last he slowly nodded. It truly is a rope of ashes. The room became silent. No one had expected such an answer. The lord looked toward his advisors. Which village made this? The messenger spoke the name of the small mountain village. The road ran back in thought. There must be someone there with remarkable wisdom. He ordered the messenger to return at once. Bring me the person who solved this challenge. Several days later, the messenger arrived once again. The village gathered in the square. The headman lowered his eyes. Then he spoke quietly. It was this young man. The messenger looked surprised. You alone? The young man hesitated. His heart began to beat quickly. He remembered his mother's gentle smile. He remembered the broken branches scattered across the snowy mountain path. He remembered her words. When people become afraid, they sometimes forget their hearts. He took a slow breath. Then he bowed deeply. I cannot tell a lie. The entire village became silent. The wisdom did not come from me. It came from my mother. The messenger frowned. But your mother? The young man lifted his head. I could not abandon her. I brought her home. I have hidden her ever since. The villagers gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others stared in complete silence. The headman closed his eyes. He had suspected something, but he had never asked. The messenger remained silent for a long time. Finally he said, Take me to her. The young man slowly led him to the little house. He opened the hidden door beneath the floor. The old woman quietly climbed out. She bowed respectfully. The messenger looked at her with great surprise. She did not seem frightened. She simply stood calmly, her gentle eyes filled with kindness. You solved the rose challenge? He asked. She nodded. I only remembered something I learned many years ago. The messenger remained thoughtful. Then he said, You must come to the castle. The following day, the young man and his mother traveled together. This time they walked beneath warm spring sunshine. Cherry blossoms had begun to bloom along the road. Soft pink petals drifted through the air. Birds sang happily from the trees. Everything felt different from their journey to the mountain. When they reached the castle, they were welcomed inside. The lord sat quietly upon his seat. He studied the old woman carefully. So, you are the one who made the rope of ashes possible. The old woman bowed. I only shared what age has taught me. The lord looked thoughtful. Tell me, why did your son hide you? The old woman smiled gently. Because he is kind. And why did you leave branches along the mountain path? The young man looked down in surprise. He had never told anyone that part of the story. The old woman answered softly, so that my son would not lose his way. The great hall became completely silent. Even the lord lowered his eyes. After a long moment, he quietly asked, You knew he was taking you away forever. Yet you thought only of helping him return safely. She nodded. A mother's heart does not stop loving simply because she grows old. The Lord closed his eyes. He remembered his own mother. She had passed away many years before. He remembered how patiently she had taught him, how gently she had comforted him whenever he was afraid, how often she had placed his happiness before her own. For the first time in many years, he felt ashamed. He slowly stood. Then, before everyone in the hall, he spoke. I have made a terrible mistake. The wisdom of the elderly is not a burden. It is a treasure. Their experience protects the young. Their kindness guides the future. He turned towards the messenger. From this day forward, the order is ended. No family shall ever again abandon their parents upon the mountain. The words spread through the hall like warm sunlight. The young man closed his eyes in relief. Tears quietly rolled down his cheeks. The old woman simply smiled. It was the same peaceful smile she had always worn. Soon the news reached every village throughout the land. Families embraced one another. Many old people who had feared the coming winters were welcomed home. The mountain became quiet once again. No longer was it a place of sorrow. Instead, people climbed its peaceful paths to pray, to enjoy the forest, and to remember the lesson it had given them. Years passed. The young man continued living in the little house with his mother. They planted rice together each spring. They watched the fireflies dance during warm summer evenings. They gathered bright autumn leaves. In winter, they sat beside the fire drinking warm tea while snow quietly covered the fields outside. The old woman grew even older. Her steps became slower. Her hands became softer. Yet her wisdom never faded. Children from the village often visited. They loved listening to her stories. She taught them about the seasons. She taught them how to read the weather by watching the clouds. She taught them how to care for the forest without taking too much. Most of all, she taught them that kindness was never wasted. One spring morning, many years later, the young man and his mother sat beneath a blooming cherry tree. Soft petals drifted gently around them. The mountain stood peacefully in the distance. It is beautiful, the young man said. His mother smiled. Yes, it has always been beautiful. We simply needed to learn how to see it. The breeze carried the scent of fresh blossoms through the warm air. Birds sang from the branches above. Far away, the quiet mountain watched over the village just as it always had. And from that day on, people remembered its name not only as a place of sadness, but as a mountain that reminded reminded everyone that love, wisdom, and compassion grow stronger with age. And whenever parents and children walked together beneath the spring whispering trees, they remembered the old mother's broken branches scattered gently upon the snowy path, leading her son safely home. For sometimes the greatest wisdom is not found in books or castles. It lives quietly in gentle hearts, and those hearts light the way for generations to come. So the story is finished. So thank you for watching. Good night.